Dear family and friends, I realize that this is a strange way to say goodbye, but it will have to do.
I met John Smith in Kathmandu, Nepal, at the beginning of a trek, and I admired his red ragwool socks. And later that afternoon, he came to my tent, and he presented me with a pair of his socks. I realized looking back that that was the moment he gave me his heart.
John Smith came into my life because he married my old friend Catherine. We saw each other at meals when they would visit in the Bay Area, but we always figured out how to sit next to each other because we always loved to talk.
When you sat at John's dinner table and you were new, he would draw you out.
Anytime you interacted with him, you felt like you were the most important being in the world.
He'd say, tell me about what you do. Tell me about who you are. And he really gave you voice.
Dad really took people as they were. He didn't have preconceptions about how people should be, and therefore he could talk to anybody about anything.
He got people, he got nature in a big way, and he got adventure, and he was a reader. He was a student of life, lifelong.
He was diagnosed with Alzheimer's through an MRI.
Diagnosed with what he called Dr. Alzheimer, which is typical of John's playfulness.
John had the memories of his mother, who lived to nearly 103 years old, and she spent the last 3 years in her memory care facility, struggling with the exit door, trying to get out.
And he wanted none of that.
Both Father Time and Alzheimer's have caught up with me, and it's my turn to leave the party, so to speak.
He didn't want to be living in an institution and not have his mind and not have his body and be a burden on other people. And he couldn't have been more clear about that from 15 years ago to as it accelerated as he got closer to it.
There was no break in his understanding of what his right was, or what he was free to choose. It was consistent. It was just all of a sudden, he was going to do it.
Here in Oregon, we have a Death with Dignity Act.
But that didn't cover dementia and Alzheimer's.
The Oregon Death with Dignity Act is limited by the diagnosis of a terminal illness that has an end point within 6 months. One could wish that Alzheimer's had a 6-month limit, but that's not the case.
But then Jimmy, I think, found out about Final Exit Network. And that was the kind of the breakthrough moment.
And so I set up the contacts with John, and they hit it off right away. John just hit it off with people. He just had that quality.
One of John's first questions was, do I need clothes on the other side? And I knew instantly that I had somebody that was just wonderful. Within a few minutes, he was telling me that he had a celestial phone booth in his backyard and that he'd like me to use it when I came to visit him.
John wanted to create the celestial phone booth where you could come and contemplate your ancestors and sit and have a little visit and talk with those who have left us, and that wouldn't be troubled by an actual phone or an actual booth. An old friend of his said, "Oh, John, that's prayer." And you don't expect an answer.
Let me remind you that none of us lives in a vacuum. Each of us is both a private self and a reflection of those who make up our greater world.
He was going to do it on his 90th birthday in September, and in May, he felt that he was declining rapidly, so he moved the date up.
And he called me a week later and said, "You got to come next week because it's happening faster than I like."
We had imagined John living at least to his 90th birthday, which would have been a couple of months later. But gradually everybody realized that holding on is not a form of love.
It was a peculiarly heightened sense of joy that we had because he was getting what he wanted.
There's tons of other cultures. They have total ways of jumping into death. They have rituals, they have poems, they have music, they have all these celebrations around it. And we're sitting here like, whoa, death, frightened of it. It wasn't that way. It was like, here we go.
And so we have this big back deck. And John said, "This is like a houseboat." I thought, his 90th birthday is coming up. And we can celebrate his 90th birthday right now. And we're going to get a steering wheel for the houseboat. You get to steer your own life. And John took great delight in standing at the steering wheel and steering with everyone who came into the house.
As a troubled young man, I once asked my sainted grandfather, how does God decide who gets to go to heaven? And Grandpa said, everyone goes. Like it's a professional secret, but in fact, everyone goes. There's no separation from final reality, and John liked that a lot.
Somebody said, "Are you sure you want to do this now?" And he goes, "Yes." Like, no time like the present, let's go. Like, he was excited for what came next.
How special that was that he could laugh and just have all the emotion, and it was a light last day.
He wasn't scared, he wasn't worried. He was excited, and that means the world to me.
I learned a lot seeing that, and it completely ended any fear I've ever had around death.
It deepens gratitude to have that it was such a non-bullshit experience.
John's decision to end his life has been inspiring for everyone because he faced that with such clarity and real happiness. It is critically important for people to be able to have these end-of-life conversations and understand that being loving and clear and honest about it is a gift that we can give to our loved ones, and it's a gift that we can give to ourselves.
In short, you help shape me, and I do the same for you without either of us being aware of it. And thank you once again for making my good life even better. With love and highest regards, John.